Hi, I'm David. Welcome to my channel, My Yard Sale. Today I want to talk a little bit about how I can deal with tough situations or difficult situations. And I never learned how to do this. This is something that I just always did since I was a kid, and I still use this today. So when I was a kid, I grew up in Florida, and I have another post about that, how great it was. Excuse me. I had an amazing life. I lived with my grandparents, my nana and papa, for many years, and I had family all very close in the Orlando area. Great weather for the most part. It was just a great way of life. And then at some point, pretty shortly thereafter, well, not shortly thereafter, but around, let's say, first grade or so, my mother and my stepfather decided they wanted to move across the country, and they were looking for work. They were looking for a better life, I guess. And moving to Denver wasn't a bad idea. It just was definitely a good idea for them and a less of a good idea for me. So I lived in Denver and then after that in Connecticut for many years. I lived away from my family, away from the place I grew up and lived as a kid, the place that I loved, and everybody that I loved lived there. So I lived away for many years. And then many years later, after going to different schools every year, all the challenges for a kid in between first and, I don't know, 10th grade, all the difficulties that moving every year and going to a new school every year, all the difficulties that those brought up, I was very, very happy to be moving back to the Orlando area around my family and all my friends and people that I knew in a house that I was a baby in with my grandparents. Like it was really, really, it was amazing. I loved it. It was so cool. So there was a house that I lived in that was pretty amazing. It was a spacious house. We had orange trees on the property. So there was a really nice navel orange tree. There was just really nice trees. It was great. But even better, there was a putt-putt golf place within walking distance of the house we lived in. Now, I know everybody doesn't love putt-putt golf, but I love putt-putt golf. I don't really like golf, but I love putt-putt. I'll play putt-putt for 10 hours if I could. I spend a good amount of time just picking out which color clubs and which color ball I'm going to use playing putt putt. I take a lot of satisfaction in that. But so I lived within walking distance of this putt putt golf place in Orlando. And I go back to this place in my mind very often because I remember taking whatever money I had scratched together and walking up to the putt putt golf place, going through all the process to get checked in, get my ball, get my clubs, and get myself set up in the course that I knew very, very well. Maybe I was a scratch golfer in putt putt golf at that time. I don't know. I could play putt putt for a 12-year-old or 15-year-old or however old I was. I could play some putt putt. I could have played it for money probably. But I can remember walking up to this putt putt golf place, and I remember standing outside on the pavement on the sidewalk, walking to the place, and thinking to myself how happy I was to be back in Florida with all the people that I knew and the kids that I knew in the neighborhood that my grandparents lived in, and the weather that I knew. I wasn't going to be freezing my ass off anymore. I can remember just thinking about how things were great at that point. And in my mind, I can even picture it. I remember taking a step back inside of my mind, taking in the sounds and the heat and the smell. They used to cook a lot of popcorn in that putt putt golf place, so it smelled like popcorn, buttered popcorn. I remember the smell, and I remember thinking, I want to remember this time forever. So I can close my eyes or even take a second and reel back inside of my head and go back to that point in my life that was the greatest thing ever, coming back to the place that I loved, to be around all the people that I loved and be around my friends that I had since I was a kid, and going to play putt putt, which is kind of funny because that was a high point. But I can remember exactly how it felt, what it tasted like, what it sounded like, what it smelled like. I can remember all those details like it was yesterday. Somehow I had enough sense to take a step back in my mind and remember that. And over the years, any time that comes up that's very difficult, I'll take a step back in my mind and I will remember that point and how great it was. And that will pull me out of whatever, downturn that I'm in. And occasionally, if I'm having a tough time, I will take a minute and I'll take a step back to that time and I'll open my eyes back up and I'll be back in check. I'll be back in order and back on pace, which is kind of interesting. So what I would suggest is that if you have a place that you love, you have a place that you like really really enjoy, you around, to be around the people that are around you, take a minute and smell the smells, listen to the sounds. They may be birds, it could be music, could be, who knows what it is. It could be a ice cream truck, who knows. But remember the smell, remember the sounds, remember everything about it, and then use that as a place to go back to in your mind when you need an escape away from what's very very difficult. I'm gonna be honest. In this process that I'm going through with this whole metabolic thing and diabetes and prediabetes and all these issues that I'm having, I go back to that putt putt golf place. Excuse me. I go back to that putt putt golf place very often. And actually, over the years, I lived in a couple of different places that I've really enjoyed, and I've used the same process to go back to those places. And actually, at one point, I was very musically inclined, and I really enjoyed music. I think we all do that. And I got to the point where I could listen to a song. I would take a couple minutes, and I would really let the song just like totally sink in. And it got to the point where I could hear a song later on in my life and go back and I would know exactly what year and where I lived and the people that I was around. I could remember the instance of when I first heard that song, or it reminded me. And actually over the years I've used that in a couple different ways. I used to like to buy baseball cards. I have baseball cards and comic books. And I can remember exactly when and where I got specific baseball cards and comic books because I spent a couple minutes when I got those things and really just let it set in where I was and what I did, and I let it really just set into my brain. And so I use those instances all the time. Sometimes when I just need to take a mental break, I just stop for a second. I'll take myself back to the putt putt golf place, and then 5 minutes later, I'll open my eyes or come back to life, and it almost be like a little mini vacation. I use that often. I think that this is good for probably younger people, but for older people, it might be a little bit more difficult. Like it's harder for me now to really enjoy a place enough that I'm gonna be able to take the time to soak in all the all the pieces and parts of the environment that I'd want to remember. I don't do that as much these days. Occasionally I do, but this is a way that what I'm talking about here is how I can pull myself out of a pretty difficult mental situation and try to come out of the situation on a more positive note. And trust me when I tell you, I've definitely experienced over the last 2 to 3 years the most difficult situations that I've ever been in my life. And I do find myself going back to that sidewalk in front of the putt putt golf place, right down the road from Club Wana and the place where the girls would be in bathing suits out on on this swing in a clown costume. I can't remember what it was called, but it was up the road from this place. It was actually right near the High Life Fronton in Orlando. But so I go back to that place very often, and sometimes even I'll smell the popcorn. If I cook popcorn in my microwave, I'll have to take a minute and I'll go back to that putt putt golf place. But that definitely refreshes my mind and resets me to keep moving forward. I hope this is helpful. If this has been interesting at all, do me a favor. Give me a thumbs up, and if you want to hear more of my story, do me a favor and subscribe. I've got hopefully some interesting stuff going on. At least I feel like it's interesting. I don't know whether the people think it's interesting, but it'll be interesting when I say that I've cured myself and that I'm back to my health. That'll be a good thing. Anyways, I hope this is interesting. I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.